Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. Tonight I would like to talk about an issue that I have raised on a number of occasions in this chamber. And I would like to particularly raise this issue at this time because just on the 21st of August, it was the 5th anniversary of the Montara Oil Spill. And while we can be thankful that significant changes have been made in the light of that to the Australian oil regulatory process, it's not the same for Indonesian communities, fishers and seaweed farmers who are still being affected by this disaster. I have followed this issue for the last 5 years and have had the opportunity to visit West Timor and speak to people who have serious concerns about the possible impacts of the spill on their livelihoods. Communities continue to report a loss of production in local fisheries and seaweed farming industries. Seaweed farming industries have also registered a decline since the spill. On August the 21st, 2009, thousands of barrels of oil began spilling into the sea off the Kimberley coast, and it became one of Australia's worst oil disasters. And while we had an inquiry into the disaster in Australia, which did lead to a change in legislation and changes about the way the industry is regulated, the oil also headed towards Indonesia. And there's been no major study into the mysterious illnesses that people have reported or the losses to fishing and seaweed production that have emerged there. In addition to the millions of litres of oil from this 74-day crisis, Australian authorities applied 184,000 litres of dispersant into the sea, and of course this is toxic. In many of these dispersants that we use were toxic. According to reports by Indonesian universities, fishing and seaweed communities in the impoverished East Nusa Tenggara region have lost more than $1.5 billion since the spill, and it's caused that amount of damage. There remain very significant concerns that oil and dispersants have had a detrimental impact on the marine environment and those that depend on it in Indonesian communities. Concerns about the impacts on Indonesian fishers and communities were raised at the time, but they were largely ignored by governments and the company involved. Not enough was done at the time to look into these issues, and monitoring has not been put in place. Three successive Australian governments have failed to take action on this. The governments have hidden behind the absence of a direct request from Jakarta as the excuse not to investigate the claims that followed the Montara disaster. The Federal Resources Minister Martin Ferguson, in a statement, said the government is waiting for formal advice from the Indonesian government. After failed bids to negotiate compensation with the company responsible, PPTEP, Indonesia's Deputy Environment Minister urged the Australian government to help. He is backing efforts to have the company and both governments order a study into whether the illnesses and the loss of production is linked to the spill, because they just don't know. He hoped the Australian government would persuade PPTEP to take some corporate responsibility. The Deputy Environment Minister said PPT's activities are in Australia and Australia can pressure PTTEP to solve this problem. The Government of Australia has the power, the authority. Unfortunately, the government's response has been a little bit lacklustre, and I don't think they see the seriousness that the Indonesian communities and fishers take the impacts. They just don't know whether they have the impacts. They want a study so they can ascertain whether the impacts they felt were in response to this spill. Industry Minister Ian Macfarlane says Australia tightened its oil and gas industry regulation in response to the spill, which is true, it did. And for any further issues relating to the waters outside Australia are matters to be addressed by the company in consultation with the relevant government, a spokesperson for the minister said. Well, we don't believe that's good enough. Indonesian fishers and seaweed growers are deeply concerned that they are still suffering the effects of this spill. And in fact, all they're urging is a study to be undertaken at this stage. They want to know whether the oil that spilled and the dispersants have had an impact on their livelihoods. I urge the government to reconsider this issue and talk to the company to require a study to be done.
Thank you.